You're listening to the Really Useful Podcast. This is the tech podcast for technophobes from makeuseof.com. My name is Christian Colley, and joining me this week is Ben Stegner. Hey, Ben.
Hello, Christian.
And Gavin Phillips.
Hey, Christian. How you doing?
Hello. This is a surprise. Now, the reason for this, dear listener, is you may notice by looking at the count on this podcast, this is episode 8 of the current run, but it's also episode 100 of the Really Useful Podcast. I can't believe we've hit 100.
That's quite an accomplishment. You know it's real when you get into the triple digits.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I run another podcast, which I've mentioned previously, and that's about to hit 400, although we've kind of lost count along the way. But it seems to have taken a lot longer to get to 400 than it took to get to 100, and I don't understand why. It doesn't make any sense. But yes, we've done 100 episodes of tech tips, chatting, ideas about things, relaying nonsensical ideas about technology that actually turn out to be completely true and work. And even we've had at least one interview, and I believe we've got a couple more lined up, fingers crossed. So that's been the general format over the past, 2-3 years. Yeah, episode 100. So this is we're going to go into kind of formatless chat, basically. We did have kind of lofty ideas of saying what's your favourite tech thing from the past 3 years, but I think basically we're just going to go into a bit of a chat, structure-free this week, and I'm going to I'm going to start this by asking Gavin what his favourite piece of memory is on his third computer that he built, but I'm not going to do that because that'd be really... Actually, I am going to do that. No.
Gosh, I could just feel like the cold sweat creeping over my back. Like, I totally know exactly what to say right now.
Actually, though, PC building is an interesting topic. Now, I built my first PC with help in 1999, 2000, 2001 sort of time. And it was a bit of a disaster, and I shorted something and had to get a replacement sent out. And then about 6 months later, there was a thunderstorm, and the telephone wire was plugged into the modem, and obviously the modem got burnt out. But I spent a lot of time building PCs up until about 2012, 2013, and I decided I'd rather have a laptop because it's more flexible for working. But what do you use, Gavin?
I use a bit of both. So I have
Right.
my dedicated desktop rig, which is primarily for work, but it also doubles up as my main gaming station.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a really hefty 17.5-inch laptop, which is...
How big?
Yeah, it's so...
Is it HP?
No, it's an MSI. It's like an MSI gaming laptop, gaming in inverted commas here, because it's got an NVIDIA N40M GPU in it. But as you know, and I'm sure as some of our listeners probably know, that some of the integrated GPUs just aren't really worth considering for gaming. So it didn't really work. And I also have a third laptop. Well, I've got 5 laptops in total, but that might be quite a long list to get through. But the other one I will tell you about is my Pinebook Pro Linux laptop, which is a fantastic bit of kit. And I think that cost in a sale $200.
Yeah, they are amazing computers.
It's so good. It doesn't have the highest specs, but it has an incredible screen and an incredible battery life. And for $200, it's just it's way, way better than I ever thought it would be.
Yeah. I
There is something to be said for having that quick computer. You can it boots up quick, and the screen doesn't give you a headache, and it's just like a nice secondary device.
So are you using a tower, aren't you, Ben?
Yeah, I have a desktop that I built shortly after I went full-time as a writer, so I built it in early 2017, so it's almost 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then other than that, I have a MacBook Air that I use for when I'm working and traveling or doing Mac-specific stuff, but almost all the time I'm on my desktop.
So when you built it, did you have anything particularly in mind that you wanted to be able to do with it? Did you build it for gaming? Did you build it for heavy lifting, processing, or just for doing work?
Yeah,
What's your spec?
I kind of wanted it to be all around because I knew I'd be working on it all day, but I also wanted it to be able to run some games because there were certain games that were only on PC that I wanted to play or multiplayer games with friends or whatever. So I kind of did like an all around deal. I think it was maybe $1,000 at the time. So it's not like the beefiest gaming computer you'll find, but it was, pretty solid. It still runs well. I mean, nothing in it's like super outdated, but just kind of getting the itch to put a new set of hardware in it, I guess. So, but yeah, it's an all rounder.
And what about you, Gavin? What about yours? Did you build your tower?
Yeah, I built mine. The first time I built it was, I don't know actually. It was before I went freelance as a writer, but it wasn't too long before. And then I recently upgraded it. I upgraded it. Actually, started upgrading it around this time last year in 2020's Black Friday sales, and so I bought a motherboard, and I bought some RAM last year, and then I waited for another deal to get a new CPU. And so the last piece of the puzzle is obviously a GPU, which, as you guys know, is very, very expensive to do at the moment. So that's probably going to have to wait for a little bit longer until the prices come way back down, because they're trading for twice as much at the moment. But I did have the good fortune of, when I first built and bought the original rig that I bought quite a high-end GPU at the time, a GTX 1070, which is still perfectly adequate for so many games. So it's not something that's actually pressing in the meantime, but yeah, in terms of actual like gaming and stuff, it's more than capable to handle most stuff now that the CPU has been upgraded to one of the latest Ryzen chips.
That's kind of where mine's at too. I have an AMD 480 Sapphire with 8 GB of video RAM, so it's, I mean, I play like Overwatch, Apex Legends, Rocket League with friends, so nothing I play is super high end. So it definitely does well enough. Even a couple years later, I think my CPU is one of my bottlenecks too. Though I got an i5 when I built it, I'm definitely gonna get something a little heavier duty for the next one.
Yeah, I think at the moment, especially with the disparity between CPU prices, which are still relatively normal and level, versus GPU prices, which are just utterly insane because of chip manufacturing shortages and cryptocurrency mining and what have you. So it could be one of those things. So that's why I did the CPU, because it was good. Like basically, the rest of the system was basically bottlenecked by the system, by the CPU I already had. So switching that out, and suddenly I can run games in ultra that I previously would never have dreamt of trying. So I quite like my racing games. So Assetto Corsa Competizione is really quite a high intensity game with all the processing that goes on. And switching out that one bit of hardware, suddenly I could run everything in ultra. So it made a massive difference.
That's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, well, oh man.
The Italian really rolled off your tongue there. I'm impressed.
Absolutely, yes.
I'm trying to think.
Local to the area.
I'm trying to think what the last PC I built was, and I think I'm actually the last PC I built, I was completely on the wrong stick there, 'cause it's just coming to my mind that I built my dad a PC a few years ago. 3 years ago, I spent £400 on building my dad a shuttle PC, so compact enough to fit under his table, good enough to run flight simulators on and stuff. And he did something to it, so it wouldn't boot anymore. And in the space of 5 days, it wouldn't boot. He went on eBay, bought a Dell. How impressed was I?
Man. Yeah.
How'd that work out for him?
Oh, he wants me to fix the other one, which I've been refusing to do on principle. But I think I built it. I think yes, I'm pretty certain the one that I built is Windows 11 compatible, and his Dell isn't, and he wants to upgrade to Windows 11. So yeah, I'm probably going to be doing that over the winter holiday while he's visiting my sister. But I mean, thinking aside from that, there's actually technically I built it because it was in kit form. There's a Raspberry Pi in a case on my desk, and it's not like a little plastic case. It's a Raspberry Pi with a hard disk drive and a fan and a sort of aluminium case for cooling. So I built it. And I chose the hard drive to go in with it. So technically, I built it. So I guess that's
counts.
Yeah.
Or you assembled it.
All right, I assembled it.
Well, it's only two hands, though. It's only two hands.
Well, it depends how you look at it. I mean, it reminds me, actually, I saw this, a mini PC. People have been building mini PCs running retro games. And there's a guy on YouTube called the Raster Eye. And he's built, it uses a chip called System on a Module. Begging pardon, it's SOM304RD System on Module board, which he's then placed on a custom built board with USB socket, a D-sub game port / mini port, PS2 port, VGA port, micro SD port, a USB 2, an audio, and it runs Windows 95, Windows 98, and MS-DOS. And that's specifically what it's designed to do.
That's pretty cool, isn't it? So you've built a really decently functioning computer, I imagine on what's a very small budget, and it runs probably a very decent amount of programs. You've not forked out loads of money, and it's perfect for, a wide variety of people.
Yeah. It's apparently you can build it for 250 quid. You can't actually buy it. You have to download the files and source the various parts, and then have the main board built and then sent over, and then you assemble it yourself, much like I did with this Raspberry Pi. But I mean, it's a really cool thing. It's called the Wii C, and if you're into retro MS-DOS games, because MS-DOS games and retro Windows games don't really get the same attention that, say, NES games and Genesis / Mega Drive games and Amiga and Atari and C64. All those, they're like the prime, and PlayStation 1. They're the kind of prime retro thing, aren't they? But, MS-DOS was, and Windows 95 and Windows 98 were massive for gaming in the sort of mid to late 90s.
Yeah, I didn't have any experience with too many of those games, so that would be like a treasure trove of new retro games I've never really tried. I had a couple of games on the computer when I was a kid, mainly like educational games. I played Sonic CD on the computer too. I remember that, but MS-DOS was before I was playing games, so that would be a new world to explore.
Yeah, there's plenty of good games. I mean, the thing is, over the past few weeks, I've transitioned to using Linux sort of 90% of the time, where it was kind of 50-50 before, and it was just a case of swapping between laptops. Since I moved into my new office, I've got my Linux laptop set up, and I'm very tempted to, for some reason, I was tempted to start playing, Gavin may appreciate this, Championship Manager 98-99 in MS-DOS. And this is a soccer management game, Ben. It's basically spreadsheets. And then I decided it was too much like work.
I was going to say, like, managing a team can be fun in the right context, but spreadsheets, not so much.
Yeah, so I didn't quite go into it, but it's I've basically got this whole set. I've got this beautiful new monitor attached to the laptop, and because I've got a 17-inch laptop like you have, Gavin. It's not quite as big as yours. It's only just the 17. It's not HP and it's quite heavy. It's basically it's a kind of a PC replacement laptop. I think they called them at the time, didn't they? And it's the screen's big, but it's not quite big enough for my failing eyes. So I got this 24-inch display, Huawei, in a Black Friday deal on Amazon. It's really nice. Oh, that was me just banging it. It's all right. Now, the thing about it, and this is kind of like my next thing that I wanted to go into, because when you're building a PC, you also need to kind of consider the monitor as well. And I haven't bought a monitor in years. The last monitor I bought is currently attached to my son's Wii U, because the kids like retro gaming in our household as well. And this Huawei thing that I've got here is really, really nice. And like install it, and the screen goes right up to the edge of the bezel as well, which is nice. And one of the things that I mentioned that I had this idea of playing games and chose like possibly one of the dullest games, but it's a really nice monitor, and I really want to play a proper decent game on it, and I can't really settle on something that I can do and just like get into and then quickly come out of again to do some work, And I'm a little bit reluctant to impose a sort of gaming. I don't just like turn my office into a game room, basically, because it's not supposed to be a game room. Do you know what I mean?
It's a civil place where people come to work. And, it's a very sensible location.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that, but of course, the first time I ever played Doom, oh no, not Doom. First time I ever played Quake, it was in an office. But yeah,
yeah.
Something you can jump in and out of. How about Minesweeper?
I'll just stick to the spreadsheets if we're going with Minesweeper.
Trying to think. I already mentioned it, but Rocket League is kind of a good fit for that. I mean, because the games are only 5-ish minutes. Mm-hmm. You might get addicted and have to play a bunch of them, but they're not like a huge commitment. I'm trying to think of another like jump in, jump out kind of game. Splatoon's good for that on Switch.
Oh, we haven't got Splatoon. I keep meaning to buy it, and then something else comes up.
Yeah, it's a good. I had a friend over a couple weeks ago, and I was showing him some games he's never seen, and he quite likes Splatoon actually. I got the second one on Switch when it came out. I'd never tried the first one, and it's fun. I mean, it's not the deepest game, but it's like I said, the main matches only last for 3 minutes, so it's a fun jump in, play a few matches, and not too much commitment.
Yeah, I like the idea of that actually. Yeah, maybe it will be that. Is it on PC?
No, Splatoon 1 is on Wii U. Splatoon 2 is on Switch.
Yeah, I remember seeing the trailer on the Wii U. I think we had the demo on the Wii U. But
I remember playing the demo for that game at a Best Buy. I didn't have a Wii U yet, and I was thinking about buying one. I didn't get one for quite some time after that, but must have been a limited time that the Wii U was in Best Buy, because I don't think anybody was too excited by the Wii U. Even though I like the Wii U.
I like the Wii U.
That's not a very popular opinion, but I like it as well.
Yeah, I like it. We bought Wii U years and years ago, not too long after it came. In fact, if memory serves correctly, we got it about 6 or 7 months after it came out. And that's the nearest I've ever got to buying a console when it comes out. And everyone sort of pointed and laughed at me. So I'm really loath to ever do it again, basically.
Yeah. Kind of funny, because if you got a Switch right away, everyone would be like, well, you had a Switch since it came out. And with the Wii U, it's like, you bought a Wii U almost when it came out. Nintendo actually did that with the 3DS. When it came out, I think it was $250 in the US, which was when the 3DS came out, people were not too kind to it. Like, they said it was not good enough, and the game library was pretty bad. So like within a couple months of the 3DS coming out, they cut the price by I think $50.
Wow.
And anyone that had bought it in that first time period, they had a program that was called like the 3DS Ambassador, and they gave them it was like 10 free NES games and 10 free Game Boy Advance games, I think. And that was the only place to get those Game Boy Advance games. They've never like re-released them on the 3DS, so kind of a nice perk for being an early adopter, I guess, but that doesn't happen too often.
No, it doesn't.
That's really odd, isn't it? Yeah. But I remember trying the 3DS when it first released at Eurogame or Gamescom held in London, literally the year it came out, and like getting on it and being like, oh, this is pretty interesting. This is pretty cool design, and playing the latest Mario and using the bottom pad and seeing what it was like, and then looking at the price tag and being like, really? That's an awful lot of money. Like, come on.
Yeah, because I think Nintendo's handhelds have always, one of the reasons they've been popular is the price. Like the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance were all relatively dirt cheap, enough to buy like one for all your kids. So it was I think that was a high. I'm looking at it now. I had that wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was $250 when it launched, and they dropped it to $170. So that was quite a price drop
Yeah.
that quickly, which is a little bit more of a price. The 3DS has a great library, but yeah, for the original price, that's way too much. And they kind of abandoned the main gimmick of the system. Like when the 3DS was newer, it was, you had games like Mario 3D Land that were taking advantage of the 3D, and Ocarina of Time 3D and Star Fox 64 3D, like big remakes. And then maybe three-quarters of the way through the 3DS's lifespan, even the first party Nintendo games like I think WarioWare didn't have any 3D, and a couple other games. I think Metroid Samus Returns did, but a bunch of them didn't. It was like Nintendo almost said, "Yeah, we got a good system, but the 3D is kind of a gimmick, so we're just going to turn that off and hope nobody cares."
That's the problem with 3D. It always has been a gimmick. VR aside, since the 1950s when they introduced 3D in cinemas, and then it came back cyclically, didn't it? So like 20 or 15, 10, 15, 20 years or whatever, it comes back and then it goes again, it comes back and it goes again. And it is pretty gimmicky because there is always, nearly always, the requirement to wear something on your eyes, and people kind of get sick of it eventually. Or like a few years ago when we had the last sort of like cinematic 3D explosion, which some movies still have 3D, I think, or they did before the coronavirus shut all the cinemas, and then it kind of, all the movies, like the main screening is like 17 screenings in 3D and like 3 screenings without 3D, and then over time people get sick of bothering with the 3D and forget the glass and think, I can't be bothered with the 3D. 3D is more expensive, I'll just go to the standard showing, and then it just stays cyclical. And I think 3D is just a bit of a gimmick in the majority of cases, whatever the medium.
I would agree. Yeah, my family had a 3D TV, and we had some like 3D Blu-rays, so we would watch movies.
I'd forgotten about 3D TVs.
What's that?
I'd forgotten all about 3D TVs.
Yeah, we had one that was a 3D TV. I mean, it works well. Like it's as good as watching a movie in the theater. It's in 3D, other than the smaller screen, obviously. But you can just bring the glasses from the theater home, and then it just works. So it looks good. But it's just, I don't know. To me, it never really. There's cool moments. It's like something fun to show your friends when they come over and see it for the first time. But like, it doesn't. To me, it was never like a must-have thing. And I also think it's cheesy in movies when there's like a moment where they shot that just because it would look cool in 3D. Like someone throwing a punch or something, and it's like coming right at you. Like it's just something they did. Just for 3D moment. So I never really found that it really elevated anything too much. Same thing with the 3DS games. I mean, a handful of games used it well, but most of the time it was, oh, cool, it's in 3D, but it wasn't a necessity.
You a 3D fan, Gavin?
No, not at all, actually. I'm really not a fan of it in the slightest. And actually kind of goes back to the point Ben made about parts of movies that they made specific to like literally, like you said, like throw a good punch in a film. So now you go back and look at these films that were designed with that in mind, and those specific shots now look even more ridiculous than they did, because you're sitting there going, what on earth would you shoot from that angle? Oh, wait, it's because they used a terrible technology. I see. And the whole shot looks out of place and out of kilter from the entire film, which, I don't know, like you get those films that are like kind of deeply immersive, and I guess there weren't that many deeply immersive films with 3D because you're always being thrown about by the effects and what have you. But it makes it even worse now that it's not there, because you're going, oh, yeah, I see. Yeah, that's bad. That's just bad.
All right,
that's a good point, that like a lot of movies that relied on 3D like might not have had as deep of a plot or whatever, like stuff that usually carries a movie, because they just figured, oh, it's 3D. People will be blown away every time there's a water rushing at them in 3D or whatever.
Avatar was 3D,
sitting at home
wasn't
waiting for it, going, oh, no, nothing. Okay.
Avatar, that was 3D, wasn't it?
Well, that was the first one, wasn't it? That was really like mainstream 3D. That probably quite a lot of people's first experiences of 3D. Yeah. But yeah, translating it into like home theater watching as well. So yeah, my family had a 3D TV. I didn't really get to use it much because I wasn't living at home at the time. But whenever I did go home, they'd maybe have a new film and it'd be like, oh, this is quite cool. But yeah, as a long-term thing, you wouldn't go back and watch them now, especially as like, TVs don't last as long as they used to as well. So like the tech that you had with it, so maybe you bought a 3D Blu-ray, but now you can't watch it anyway. If you've switched up to a regular, a regular 4K TV or whatever.
So that's 3D. What about VR? Because I'm very dubious about VR, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I haven't tried it.
So for me, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show before. I just have a PlayStation VR, which is like, I guess, like bottom rung of VR. So take what I say with a grain of salt, I guess. I have enjoyed some aspects of VR, but my overwhelming feeling with it is that a lot of VR games, at least on PSVR, they're they're fun, but I think they're only fun because they're in VR. And if they weren't, they would be pretty basic. So, for example, like a shooting gallery game, it's cool because it's like, oh, I can grab the magazine and reload the gun and look around and aim and all that, and it feels cool. But like that's not really anything crazy for a game. A lot of games have guns, obviously. So there are a couple of games that I think use VR well. Like there's one called Moss on PSVR. It's like a storybook game where there's a mouse that's going on a quest, and you're like the reader of the story. So the mouse like looks up and like you're in the world. It's like looking at you. So you have to like help it cross gaps and solve puzzles and stuff. So it's a clever story and a fun little adventure game. Like that kind of game I think works well for VR. I love Beat Saber. It's a good rhythm game and a good VR game. Like everybody I've showed Beat Saber to loves it. So that's another good example. But a lot of VR games I've played, like they've been fun, but they don't stick with me like as some of my favorite games ever because they're fun because they're in VR and they're unique, but they're not really like they don't blow your mind with the gameplay or the story like other games that are my favorites. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah,
I would have to like hard agree with that as well. The headsets I've used have all been quite good quality, and I've used them from like the Oculus Rift when that first came out. I had a friend who had the very first development kit that they sent out, like the very first one. So using that all the way through, and I've used the Valve Index, the latest Valve one, and the latest Oculus Quest 2. So I've used quite a lot of variety of them, and of the same sort of all the way through experience as Ben, in the you're always kind of going, yeah, but it's only good because you're doing it within this environment. You couldn't step away from it and do it in another thing. Whereas you feel like you could port other games that don't rely on VR into VR, and they would be so much more fun. So things like, Grand Theft Auto or something like that, for example, porting that into VR is like, wow, that's immense. That's so much fun. Oh my God. The engagement in that is bonkers. But games that are exclusive VR development often just feel a bit lacking, or they're maybe relying too much on the technology and not focus on the other things that make games traditionally good, like really immersive storylines or really immersive gameplay and so on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, I don't know what games you've played in particular, Gavin, but most of the games I've played in VR, I want to say, are definitely on the shorter side. I don't think I've played a game on PSVR that's, I mean, I've played Beat Saber for 24 hours plus, but in terms of like an adventure game, that you can complete, I don't think I've played a game that's longer than maybe 6 hours or 8 hours. So now my uncle also has PSVR that he likes it a lot, and he played through Resident Evil 7 in PSVR. I played through Resi 7, but I didn't play it in VR, and he said it was even scarier and pretty intense. So I would like to maybe try that. I know that they're remaking Resident Evil 4. I think that might be exclusive to Oculus or at least some PC headsets. So that's a classic game that people love. So it'd be interesting to see how they translate that. It looks cool from the little bit of footage I've seen, but I have to try it to know for sure.
Can you see people?
Sounds terrifying. Sorry,
Can you see people sticking on a headset to join a meeting?
The average person, I don't know. I thought the average person, what would we really gain from that? I guess, like, what do we gain from that over like a Zoom or Google Meet call?
That's my concern about the whole thing. Yeah.
I think that AR is more of an interesting concept for like business use. Like I remember years ago when I don't remember what Microsoft they showed, it was like a dad helping his daughter like fix a leak or something.
Yeah.
And it had like she was looking at her pipe under her sink, and he was like drawing something in the air. I mean, it's a proof of concept, obviously, but like he was drawing something that she could see and like showing her what to grab or what to install or whatever. Like that, I think is sweet if that could be a reality. Like that makes more sense, being able to like draw something in the air and have people see it. But as far as a VR meeting where you can like walk around in something like VR chat, to me, I don't really see the business purpose of that. It'd be way too annoying to have everyone put the headsets on and all that,
Yeah,
and stupid avatars as well.
No, yeah. Oh God, yeah. People trying to dress up their avatars for meetings, try and look. You want to go with like the fluffy hair and the crazy color cape and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Or you go to log into your business avatar and you log into your weekend avatar.
I can see that happening.
Oh,
yeah.
Now, winding things back to building computers, I have, and I mentioned I built my dad a shuttle PC. I was given I had it in my wish list last year. I'd left it in my wish list by mistake, and my mum and dad got me a shuttle PC case for Christmas, and it's basically the same one I bought my dad. I put it in my wish list, just so I knew where to find it when I went to buy it for my dad, and then they bought me one the same. So I've kind of got this sort of, I've got the possibility of building a computer, and what I'm planning to do with it is using it as a Steam game server.
Okay.
So I can then just use the Steam home network syncing streaming thing. I can't remember what the feature's called, and then I can just play Steam game on pretty much any device, regardless of the spec of that device. As long as it'll run Steam, I can launch the game and stream it through the home network to that computer or tablet, probably a tablet. And that's what I want to do with it. But I don't really know anyone else who's done that. And I mean, you can do it. It's built into Steam. It's a feature, so you can do it. And the best candidate is probably Steam OS. But I don't know anyone else who's done that, so I don't know whether it's actually worth the bother of doing it.
I think I've told you this before. When Valve like discontinued the physical Steam Link and the Steam controller, whenever that, I think they were close, but whenever that was, I managed to get one of each of those. It was $5 down from the normal price of $50. So that was a pretty good deal. When I moved, I set my Steam Link up downstairs with my TV, and I set the feature up, and it works pretty well. I mean, basically, you just connect your controller, turn it on, and then once you log in, your library's there. And you can, it like syncs your favorites and stuff too. So you could just make your favorites like the games you want to play on your Steam Link, so you don't gotta scroll through 300 games or whatever. It worked pretty well. I mean, there was a little bit of hiccup here and there, but I'm all wired in, so it was pretty smooth. I'm not primary playing on PC though, so I don't have a perfect recommendation for it. But
it's not really the end connection
bit.
It's more of the building the unit that's dedicated to just playing games on Steam. That's what.
Is Steam OS even still like supported? I remember.
I believe it is.
Let's see. Latest release was July 2019. Wikipedia says. I don't know if that's accurate.
You can definitely still use it.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be releasing a new one soon because the Steam Deck will be running Steam OS. So
it only supports a certain set of hardware that's being designed for the living room experience, which obviously is something you're interested in.
So the Steam machine I was given has an Intel Core i7, a GTX 780, which isn't great, but it's decent enough. But it does have 16 gig of DDR3 RAM and a 1 terabyte drive in it. So it works really well as like an intermediate device that we just keep in the living room. No one really uses it that much, but if on the rare occasion I do have to go downstairs to play a game, or someone wants to do something that you can't do on like a normal Fire Stick or whatever, you can just plug that straight into the TV, which is really good.
That's helpful. Yeah, that's handy.
They're good bits of kit. They stopped making them years ago.
Yeah.
But they're really good little bits of kit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I remember hearing about them, but it's been forever. I didn't think they made them anymore, so glad I was correct in my assumption.
Yeah, I wanted to get one at the time, but I ended up with a Steam Link, unfortunately. And then, like Ben, a few years later, I got when they discontinued everything. I think the Steam Link was about 30, 40 quid, and then I got a controller for £5. And do you know what? I'd
so
really
cheap.
wanted one of those controllers for ages. When I actually got to use it, I tried it on Call of Duty World War II, and I hated it.
Yeah, I mean, I play most games with controllers. Like I don't. We talked about this before. I don't like keyboard and mouse just because I'm not used to it and it just feels foreign to me.
Yeah.
I know it's superior for a lot of games. I'm not denying that. But I've played around with the Steam controller and it's okay. I haven't really given it a fair shot. I've only really messed around with it, but I watched a video from a YouTuber I like that talked about kind of the failings of it. And I mean, it's interesting in theory. Like I think some of the buttons are swappable, or like the triggers or something. I could be wrong, but it's customizable in the software. So in theory, it's a controller for gamers or whatever you want to say. But I don't think the touchpads are super responsive, or they don't really feel great to me. Like I would use it to play a simple like platformer or something maybe, but I wouldn't want to like play a serious competitive game using it. I use an Xbox controller on my computer.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. Well, I'll tell you what, we're coming towards the end of our allotted time for this week's Really Useful podcast, and we've talked on and on and on about computers and consoles and games and things. And maybe we should do something to commemorate our 100th edition of the show. And that means that I'm going to say to you both to see if you can name, just mainly so I've got something to put in the show notes more than anything. Can you name the most interesting or favourite thing that you've talked about on the Really Useful podcast, Ben?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. Anything where we get to talk about games, I enjoy. So I like the episode where we talked about retro games.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about we did an episode on the Switch once.
Yeah, that was
I think.
a few weeks ago. Yeah,
like Switch tips and just game recommendations and things like that. So anytime we get to talk about games, I like that. Or maybe I like when we've analyzed some kind of topic that's happening in the tech world that we kind of break down and bust some of the myths on. I enjoy that too, but I always love games, so those have been my favorite episodes, I would say.
Okay, Gavin, you?
I think there's quite a few things, but maybe not so much a thing that we've talked about, but when we would discuss the recent news events and things like that and break them down was always good, because it always gave you some decent angles and some good meat to get into when there's always so much happening in the world of security, isn't there, that you don't always get to talk about, and it invariably gets brushed aside.
We could almost do a second podcast on that topic.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets brushed aside because something invariably happens almost immediately after it as well. So the analysis time of, you should do this becomes, but also you need to also respond to this current event that's also happening. So whenever we do get to discuss how to make our listeners' lives better by improving their security, I'm always a big fan of that, because there's so much that can go wrong and does go wrong. And there's so many small steps you can take that make it so much better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with both of you, actually, I think.
Well, and what about you, Christian? What's your number?
Well, that's the tricky thing. I mean, my first instinct is to say the one where it's just me.
Oh, okay. Because, back before we came in, ruined it, huh?
Because it means that I get the chance to re-listen to the older podcasts and then find the bits that were really good and then repackage them up in a new podcast, which is probably something that's going to happen in a few weeks' time anyway. Because I like those kind of best of ones, because it means I sit there and there's really, we're back to spreadsheets again, checking the stats of the popular shows and then finding what I suspect is the most interesting thing from that show, and then just editing it in and just recording a couple of links, and it's not because there's no one else there. It means that I get to put multiple voices in one podcast, which has never happened with a podcast other than the compilation ones before tonight, which is, I think it brings a new dimension to the Really Useful podcast, which has been really good having Ben Stegner and Gavin Phillips with me, Christian Cawley, tonight. And I think that is probably the time for us to wrap things up. Anything that you find of interest that we've discussed, you should find in the show notes. If you haven't already, do subscribe to the Really Useful podcast, and we'll be back next time for episode 101. until then, it's goodbye.